We are now in September 2022. Exactly, well, almost exactly in a couple more days. It will be 9/11 in 2022. So 21 years after 9/11 happened in 2001. And today, the pretrials that were supposed to go on in GTM0 were again canceled. And so instead of going on to this litany of continual ongoing, oh, we're canceled again, it has been in such a horrific situation of cancellations. The very last real pretrial that went on, and I will clarify what I mean by real. The last real actual progress that was made happened in January 2020. And I mentioned that in other videos that I had done. So I'm not going to go over it in detail, but it does need to be mentioned because of what we are going to be doing now for the next week in bringing information to you. In January 2020, if you had not heard this, the pretrials that went on, for the most part, Cheryl Borman, one of the learned defense attorneys, and her team put out an entire litany and or laundry list of shenanigans that have been going on with the FBI, CIA over many years. Most of these were brought up in various previous trials, open proceedings. So it was not anything that was new or surprising. It was just all together in one place. And at the end of the meeting, the judge at the time, Judge Shane Cohen, basically said that if he found out this was true, he was going to be throwing the entire 9/11 case out of court. It was a couple of weeks after that Judge Shane Cohen basically announced that because of concerns for his family's welfare, that he was going to have to retire and or step down, which in June, just the year before, when he came on because of a previous judge quitting or retiring or transferring, whatever you want to call it, gone, he said that he was going to be there for the long haul. In fact, was one of the first judges, the only judge that set a tribunal date. Remember, all these trials, all these 9/11 trials are still in pre-trial. After 21 years, still pre-trial. So back in 2019 in June, he was going to be setting an actual tribunal date, which was set for January 11th, 2021. So at that time, that gave them more than a year and a half to get their act together to be able to get this thing finally going to tribunal. In fact, he even states that he was really surprised that a date had not been set before then. But anyway, moving forward. So we're back to January 2020 when he made that momentous statement. 2 weeks later, he was quitting because of concerns for his family's welfare. A couple of weeks later, in March of 2020, is when the pandemic hit in earnest, and incrementally the GTM0 trials were shut down on an ongoing basis. Because remember, because of the pandemic, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So from that point on, all the way to September of 2021, well over a year and a half later, is when they started up again. And they were up for about 2 months, about maybe 6 weeks. And they were still in the process. It was a great big nothing burger. It was housekeeping during that time where they were still trying to figure out the replacement for the judge that left, Judge Shane Cohen. And they did find a new judge. And so that was what happened. Then the Omicron variant came out, and that cut things down for another couple of months. They were supposed to start again this year, January 2022, canceled, February canceled, March canceled, April canceled, May canceled, June canceled, July canceled, August canceled. Here we are in September. And I'm going to show you where you can find out all of these things. Now, in the meantime, well, first, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Okay, I'm bringing you to the screen of where you can go to the Office of Military Commissions. I request that everything that we do, that you please fact check me. Fact check everything I say. Everything I tell you is a matter of public access. It's open access. All public records, Freedom of Information Act. These aren't secret. I'm not, it's something having hidden information. I'm getting secret information for. No, everything I'm telling you is easily found. Start looking if you don't believe what I say. Prove me wrong. But anyway, this is the website for the Office of Military Commissions. That is, if you have a pen, you may want to write this down, mc.mil/home.aspx. You can see it up here, over here, mc.mil/home.aspx. This is the website for the Office of Military Commissions, all the trials, pre-trials, rulings, active cases, inactive cases, completed cases, cases on appeal, daily transcripts, press releases, and the calendar. It's all here. They also have a number of other things. It's quite a fascinating site to look at. Please take the time and get to know it. These are things that are all available to you. There's no excuse for being fooled by some of the things being put out there. Which, by the way, there are satire sites. This is what they're calling them now, satire sites, that are putting out information that really look real. It's amazing. It's so hard to tell any difference or whatever. But here's a hint. Go to their actual web pages and look in the About Us section and look around, and you will see that it states that the information coming out from some of these places are satire. It's the way they're covering themselves for being shills. So anyway, the Office of Military Commissions is aware of them, and now they're covering themselves in that respect. That's just a hint for you to check out on your own. Anyway, I digress. So when we go to the actual calendar on, I went to September 2022. There are other trials that are going on in Gitmo. By the way, they're all, from Saudi, Middle East, whichever. There are absolutely no American citizens anywhere that are being held, tried, detained, anything on Gitmo. And I've gone over that before. These are all from previous terrorist attacks. So this one here was also canceled. You go back to other months, you can see a multitude of all the others. Same thing. And then you go down here, the KSM et al., the 9/11 trials, was supposed to start on the 19th. And so that entire week, you can see there, it was canceled. Now they have not canceled the last week, but chances are probably pretty good that they will be canceling those also. Now, keep in mind that the reason that the trials were canceled starting in January, February, March was because supposedly, I don't know, this is just what I was told, that Cheryl Borman, the defense attorney, the learned counsel that brought out all this information in the January 2020 trial, was actually is the one that's under the investigation now. So all this hullabaloo and everything else going on, you decide what you want. But that is who is under investigation. She basically said she quit because she couldn't in good conscience represent her client while having this cloud of being under investigation. And so supposedly right now they are going and negotiating this is important if you haven't heard this before, a plea deal. A plea deal for Khalik Sheikh Mohammed et al., the 5 terrorists under trial right now for 9/11, that if they all come in and say that they are going to plead guilty to all the crimes charged against them, they will purportedly be have the death penalty taken off the table, and they will be expatriated back to their country of origin. And when that happens, case will be closed. After all that long information I just gave you, this is the important part. When this happens and a plea deal is reached, all of the questions about if any individuals within our government potentially, allegedly, possibly were involved in any of this, any information about Building 7 collapsing, any information, the entire litany of questions that are completely unanswered. The questions that were brought out by Jim Kreindler, who is the attorney for the victims and family members of 9/11. He has been fighting for well over 10 years to bring out the name that was in a federal trial that is the proverbial true orchestrator of 9/11, and has not been able to get that released. That's a story in and of itself. So folks, what I'm going to do is over the next how many days, I'm going to be doing a bunch of shorts. This is going to be, hopefully, be the longest one I'm doing. I'm just going to be doing shorts of information, showing you where to go to double back and check it, and remind you of some things of what we do know, because as far as I'm concerned, nothing's getting done or accomplished. It's kind of a round and round, unending saga of Big Nothing Burger. Is the court of public opinion at least needs to be aware of some things and demand to have some questions answered, don't you think? Okay, so this is the calendar. First reminder, going to be going to what did Rumsfeld say on September 10th, 2001. If you are not aware of this, you need to listen. This is an abbreviated video from CBS News. This was actually put out apparently in 2006, and but it also obviously came out on, it was broadcast on September 10th, 2001. Take a listen. Step one.
Pentagon. The day before 9/11, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declared war, not on foreign terrorists.
The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy.
He said money wasted by the military poses a serious threat.
In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death.
Rumsfeld promised change, but the next day, the world changed. And in the rush to fund the war on terrorism, the war on waste seems to have been forgotten.
My 03 budget calls for more than $48 billion in new defense spending.
More money for the Pentagon when its own auditors admit the military cannot account for 25% of what it already spends.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. To understand how the Pentagon can lose track of trillions, consider the case of one military accountant who tried to find out what happened to a mere $300 million.
We know it's gone, but we don't know what they spent it on.
Jim Minery, a former Marine turned whistleblower, is risking his job by speaking out for the first time about the millions he noticed were missing from one defense agency's balance sheets. Minery tried to follow the money trail, even crisscrossing the country looking for records.
The director looked at me and he says, "Why do you care about this stuff?" It took me aback, you know. My supervisor asked me why I care about doing a good job. So
he was reassigned and says officials then covered up the problem by just writing it off.
they got to cover it up. That's where the corruption comes in. They've got to cover up the fact that they can't do the job.
The Pentagon's Inspector General partially substantiated several of Minery's allegations, but could not prove officials tried to manipulate the financial statements. 20 years ago, Pentagon employee Franklin C. Spinney made headlines exposing what he calls the accounting games. He's still there, and although he does not speak for the Pentagon, he believes the problem has gotten worse.
Those numbers are pie in the sky. The books are cooked routinely year after year after year.
Retired Vice Admiral Jack Shanahan commanded the Navy's Second Fleet the first time Donald Rumsfeld served as Defense Secretary.
With good financial oversight, we could find $48 billion in loose change in that building without having to hit the taxpayers.
In the 2.5 minutes since this report began, the Pentagon has spent nearly $2 million, and it may never know where 25% of those tax dollars went.
Okay, let's go to the next thing to remember that's very important. In March 25th, 2019, my business partner, Leonard Bacani, retired police officer, was actually in Fort Meade watching the CCTV actual trials going on in Gitmo. It live streamed everything over via CCTV in a special room they had in Fort Meade. And so he was placed on, they went ahead and stopped the open proceedings for the day. And so he had the entire day open for him to do. So he went in front of the White House and he reported what they discussed that day and why it was put closed down to close proceedings because of what came out. And this is very important. I'm going to show you part of this. This is Leonard Bacani from CMON.
The judge will resume the tribunals Wednesday. So what happened yesterday? Almost the entire day, you had one defense attorney, and that was James Cottrell III, prominent in arguing most of the motions yesterday in front of the judge. What's interesting is James Cottrell is the lead defense attorney for al-Baluchi. And if you've been following our Cvine articles and videos, you know that al-Baluchi is the money man. We know that every time you follow the money, that is where the action is. Not necessarily the head of the organization, not necessarily Mohammed, but al-Baluchi knows who's involved, what's involved, where the money's going, and he's the financier. Prior to the judge announcing that we're not going to be any more hearings until they can have a secret hearing, or at least beyond the purview of the public. One thing that was prominent in that they were talking about things that even James Cottrell could not say. He was under court orders not to argue things or mention things as far as means and the methods of three-letter agencies collecting their evidence. So what came out yesterday, and this is very important, and this is, I don't know if anybody else is reporting this, but you're hearing it from Cvine. What came out yesterday was that our government knew of the plan prior to 9/11. Let me explain that. Between April 2001 and October 2001, the CIA intercepted chatter from these terrorists. Okay, this chatter consisted of 118 calls that they intercepted from 25 different telephone lines. We don't know how many people were talking on each line. It could be one, it could be a dozen, who knows. However, so we don't know exactly to the extent how many people. We do know that a linguist had positively identified these subjects that were in custody as being the people behind or talking on the phone. So that's interesting, that came out. These intercepts were made between April and October of 2001. The 9/11 attacks occurred in September of 9/11. So they knew the plan prior to 9/11. They probably didn't know the extent of it as far as when it was going to occur or exactly where. They did intercept that traffic, so you're hearing it here.